Voidmage Gamer is now partnered with Flipside Gaming, so you can use the promo code on their website, all caps Voidmage, to get 10% off all orders $10 or more. It's a great way that you can support both Flipside Gaming and Voidmage Gamer's channel. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Looks like we have some news here for the Commander decks that we're going to be getting for Commander 2019. It's going to be the same thing as before, only 4 decks, and you can anticipate the price being around $40, the same as it was for last year. It's going to be releasing the same time that they switched to a few years ago, late August. The cool thing here, while we don't actually have a confirmation on the actual cards that we're getting, we do have an idea of the themes. It's going to be 4 keywords: Flashback, Populate, Morph, and Madness. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I'm actually excited for this because it gives them decks with a specific direction as opposed to what they did last year, where you had a generic land strategy, a generic enchantment strategy, artifacts. Well, that can be good and allow you to go in different directions. Sometimes having one specific keyword to work around with makes the deck more flavorful, and that can be appealing for a lot of players, especially when you consider there's not already a lot of support for these in Commander. You of course have certain commanders that we've been fooling around with Madness. If you play vampires, Madness has been a thing. And of course Trostani has existed, and we've been using Populate with her for a while, but the entire strategy wasn't Populate, it was just creature tokens and life gain. We never really have Commander decks that are entirely focused on these keywords. They're usually just splashed into whatever deck you wanted to play. And it makes sense that they want to go with some of these because, especially with Morph, there really isn't anything Commander related that is going to take advantage of Morph. And we do have some really cool support cards like Ixodron. While it most certainly can be a good card without Morph, it's no doubt going to be an enabler for certain strategies being able to flip over those same cards using their Morph abilities all over again, which is kind of like a trap card. You get to use it whenever you want to in response to whatever your opponents are doing. It could be really cool and fun to play with certain Morph creatures, and there have been some really good ones like a Chroma Angel of Fury. The direction that they would be going with a Morph deck, I don't exactly know, but there's plenty of creatures, plenty of cards in 5 colors that have Morph, and a ton of support cards from the Khanzatar Kier block. Don't forget about that. Now, Madness is a little bit weird. You do see it in some other colors, but you're primarily going to see it in Rakdos colors, whether it be vampires or something else. There have been some Madness vampire decks in Commander, however, it's not the primary focus of the deck, so it might feel a little lackluster. Expect to see a lot of discarding abilities, something that can work as an enabler for the deck. Overall, though, I'm not the biggest fan of Madness, just because it's a weird way of getting cost reduction for certain spells, and that doesn't sound so fun for me. Populate is probably the least represented keyword, only about a dozen or so, I think 13 exactly, and these are just cards that say Populate. This is including Trostani Selesnia's Voice, probably the most well-known creature with Populate. So while we've had a commander that synergized with Populate, we only have a dozen or so other Populate-related cards. It's not really enough to make a full-fledged commander deck around Populate. But we've had plenty of enablers, though. I mean, anything creature token related is usually going to work well with Populate, but to have more Populate cards would be better. And I don't expect them to extend it past Selesnya colors, seeing as those are all 13 of the Populate cards. Something like Growing Ranks could be extremely valuable, so keep a lookout for cards like that if they don't come out in the actual deck itself. Flashback is a little bit like Morph. You have a lot to choose from within 5 colors, so it's going to be weird, a toss-up as to figuring out what they're actually going to go with. There are actually a ton of good Flashback cards. It's not like Madness, where I'm a little curious as to how that's going to work. Flashback has something like Echo of Aeons, very powerful spells, and you have a variety of things from card draw, removal. You even have some good tutors, and the common theme with Flashback is getting a little bit more value for being able to cast it from your graveyard, or sometimes the cost is much cheaper, it's more efficient, encouraging you to play it the first time so that it ends up in your graveyard. And you could also play a deck where you just mill yourself so that you can flash them back. Really sweet card here, and you probably have one of the cooler enablers in Catalyst Stone. Anything that can give you cost reduction for doing something you're probably going to spend most of the game doing is really sweet. So overall, I do like the direction that they're going with. It does have a lot of promise, and I think a big complaint for last year's Commander decks was that the direction was kind of bland. I mean, artifacts, enchantments, lands, strategies, there's already a ton of those in the format, and I felt like those decks just gave us more of the same. The ultimate complaint would have to be the fact that we don't get a lot of good land reprints. I don't know if that's going to change this year, hopefully it does. But when it comes to design, I think they're definitely on the right track here. I think some people might confuse having a specific direction with being linear. Hopefully it doesn't have to be linear, which is why it's fun to incorporate other things like enablers that just happen to work well with Populate, or Flashback, Morph, and Madness, so the deck isn't literally just 60-something cards with the keyword Populate. Obviously there's going to be more to these decks than just the keywords, but seeing as we have a ton of these cards already, I would not be surprised to see a ton of those reprints. And this is something I think the Magic community really wanted to see, a ton of useless Morph cards from the Khans of Tarkir block. As someone who opened a lot of that set, a lot of Morph cards have gone unused. I haven't even considered them as Commander playable because they're just that awful. So hopefully anything that can get me looking through those Khans of Tarkir stacks of cards again, it will definitely pique my interest. Now, way back in December, I did sort of a Commander 2019 wish list, and yeah, I understand most of what I said probably will never come true, but having quality land reprints, it's still not confirmed yet the exact cards that we're getting. So in a month or so, when we finally get the whole set spoiled, we might actually get those kind of quality reprints. And it doesn't even have to be something expensive. We don't necessarily need shock lands in every deck. That would be pretty sweet though, and they're not super expensive anymore. Even something as simple as the Pain lands, maybe some fetch lands even, because those are just going to keep getting more and more expensive if they go unchecked. And you could of course just make new lands for Commander. That's probably the one thing I think people have brought up the least, is that you don't necessarily have to reprint expensive lands if you actually just make more lands that work out well in Commander. Because the whole point of making this eternally playable is kind of backed you into a corner into thinking you just have to reprint cards for Eternal formats and it has to be playable in Legacy. Just make something like a Command Tower again, or something similar that cost you a life to use. It really wouldn't take that much effort. You could even make a Commander specific fetch land, anything like that, sort of lifting the burden of having to build these decks with actual quality lands. As someone who doesn't just make a couple good Commander decks, I like making multiples of these. Running out of lands to use is the biggest issue, so if any of that can be alleviated, my opinion of Commander 19 will skyrocket. But I want to know what you guys think about this. Are there any cool interactions you can come up with yet? I know I mentioned Catalyst Stone, Ixodron, but there's plenty more. There's definitely some in Morph. And also let me know if you're actually disappointed by this, because that matters just as much. If you feel that Wizards totally missed the mark on this, I heard some people say they should have gone with Tribal again, because there's plenty of tribes that have not been supported in Commander. But who knows, it's not too late. We might get a Vampire Tribal deck that has something to do with Madness. We might get a Populate deck that has something to do with Druids. Well, that might be unlikely. These keywords are just one aspect of these decks. And hopefully we see the result of some kind of multifaceted approach to deck design, because like I said before, you can have a specific theme without necessarily feeling linear. That usually comes with good design. But anyway, I'm Void Mage Gamer. Hope you guys have a wonderful day. Signing off. See you all next video.